this particular one, how did that change you? How did that, make you see people differently?
Well, at the time that it happened, I was in a very, very abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And um, my whole adult life has been people tell me I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was buying into the world's view of who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected me in such a way that I, I found myself running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to please everybody
Mm.
and pleasing no one, especially myself. And I
Yeah.
would be so confused about who I was and where I fit into this world because it seemed like nothing I was doing was right.
Mm.
Then I had the experience, and when I came back, I mean, sometimes God has to hit people over the head with a 2x4.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he has to hit people over the head with a lightning strike. And that's exactly what, I had 4 lightning strikes. And every time it
Mm.
was like he was turning up the volume because I was so hard-headed, I guess, and believing what the world was telling me I was.
Wow.
And then afterwards, because of the message that I got from him, which is a universal message, but it was a message that I needed to hear at the time.
Yeah.
And so he hit me with a 4th time with the lightning. Twice was ball lightning, twice was bolt lightning. And then the final lightning strike was in 2005. And it was like, okay, you're not listening to me. You're not hearing what I'm saying. You're listening to the world. And every time I would get zapped. And it, like I said, he turned up the volume each time until I was dead. And I went to heaven and I was sitting in front of him and he was able to talk to me and say, this is how it really is.
Wow.
When I came back, even though there was no judgment, there was only love. And it was such huge love. And I saw loved ones and, I saw people that I knew, but I didn't know where I knew them from. And they were from all different time periods, but everybody loved me. And I got that acceptance that I never got on this earth, and
Yeah.
it was so huge. But when I saw my life review, it was so fast. It was like everything I had done in my life from the time I was a baby until the time I grew up and, died.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't any judgment. And I didn't judge myself. I didn't know I was supposed to, because when all of this was happening, I was just going with it.
Yeah.
It was so huge, so big, so enormous, but yet it was gentle and beautiful. And there is another place that we go when we die. We don't stop being who we are.
Right.
And one of the stark things that I learned, and it was huge, it was like, I couldn't take anything with me.
Mm.
When I left, all of the things that we accumulate in our life to make us happy,
Mm-hmm.
and none of that goes with you. But what you take with you are your thoughts, your memories, your dreams, your hopes. You are still who you are.
Mm.
You don't stop existing. And death is nothing more than walking from one room in your house to another. And it is flawless and seamless. And 1 minute you're here and the next minute you're there. And what it did for me was, I've had people say, well, why didn't you take a selfie? Why didn't you take pictures? Or why didn't you do this or that? Well, you come into this world with nothing and you go out of this world with nothing. You can't take, well, I didn't even have a cell phone back then.
Exactly.
I never even heard of a cell phone back then. And so I'm like, you want me to take this 500-pound computer, gigantic screen with that big tower thing that goes with it? You want me to take that with me and take a picture? But it's like, you can't. And I never even thought about that kind of thing, because when I was there, nothing here mattered.
Mm.
The only thing that mattered was what I was going through at the time. And I did think of my children. I did think of my parents. I did think, but it wasn't like I was worried about them.
Mm.
And when I came back, I went through a period of 6 months of that oneness. But I called it a pink bubble because I didn't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
And it was like I seeing the world. I could see the life force that was coming from everything. I was still so connected to heaven, what I call heaven, and that oneness with God, and that oneness with creation, and that oneness, that love was still there. And people would tell me, "You're glowing," and I'm like, really? You can't have an experience like that, see the face of God and not come back and be changed. And
Yeah.
this lasted for like 6 months. I felt like I was walking 3 feet off the ground and just floating, and I was just so in love with everything and everyone. And no matter what you said to me, you couldn't hurt me. And when you come from a place that is so beautiful and is so high vibrational, and there's just love, and words can't describe what is indescribable.
Yeah.
And then you come back into this world, and it's like walking in half-dried cement up to your waist. And you're walking uphill because it's very dense here, and it's very low vibrational, and it's very slow moving, and it's but that's the difference between the two places.
Yeah.
But what changed me after I came out of that state of shock was this deep love for everybody. It was like, I love you unconditionally. It was that agape love type thing. And it was, I don't care what you do. I don't care what you say. I love you anyway. And I would give of myself in ways that I wasn't doing before. What I was doing before was very earthly, giving. This was sort of, I was holding birds and taking care of injured animals, and people who, we have a lot of homeless people that live around here, and they walk around at night, and a lot of times I don't sleep well, so I'm up throughout the night. I'd go out on the porch, and they would come up to me just out of the blue in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning, and they wanted water, or they wanted a cigarette, or they wanted something. And it would be like, I'd give them 2 or 3 bottles of water, or a whole pack of cigarettes, or and there was this one girl that came, and she was on something, but I could see that she was exhausted. I could see that she was just so heavy burdened and weary. And I told her to come and sit. And she sat for 2.5 hours, and she talked, and I listened, but I didn't understand a word she said. And I was giving her water, and I was giving her, a sweater, and she wanted cigarettes. I gave her cigarettes. I gave her these things. And I learned that, what you say and what you do, it's the little things that matter. And it's listening to someone, even if you don't understand what they're saying, they are being heard. You're validating them as a human being, and that we all have worth. And it was, I had people coming up to me, and they wanted change because they were hungry, and I would just take my purse and dump it in their hand. Not even thinking, and I'd have people look at me like I was a nut, but it was like, you know what? This doesn't serve me, it serves them, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve others and to love others. And I just what I do is I just wake up in the morning and I say yes to God, and He brings to me the people He wants me to help,
Mm.
and He brings people to me that can help me. And it's not within my power at all. I don't control it. It just happens, and it's little things that mean so much.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's not the big things. It's the little things, and that's what people see in their life review. Or I did saw
Yeah.
in my life review. It was the little things: the sweater, the pat on the back, you know, that kind of thing. And that's what moves mountains, and that's what changes the world. And if I can do that in my little neck of the woods, and you do that in your little neck of the woods, and someone else lives somewhere else and they do that in their little world,
Mm.
we are changing the world. It's
Mm.
it, so that's
That's
pretty much.
amazing. Um, so before I ask you more questions about, what you encountered and what you saw, during the actual near-death experience, like, how has your perspective on religion changed since you came back? Like, what's changed about that?
I was born, raised Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and I am Catholic. But what I have learned is that there is no one right religion,
Mm-hmm.
and God never asked me what religion I was.
Yeah.
And I saw people from all different faiths, all different walks of life, and there are so many. The world is huge. There's
Yeah.
7 billion people on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many different paths, or many different traditions, or many different belief systems that people follow.
Mm-hmm.
But if those pathways get that person closer to God, then it's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that, God is huge. He's so huge. He's uncontainable. There is nothing that He cannot do.
Mm.
He can talk to you through the Bible. He can talk to you through other holy books. He can talk to you through music. He can talk to you through the birds that sing in the air. He can talk to you through any means He needs to get to you. And it's not always about religion or dogma. It's about relationship. And there are a lot of dogmas that people hold on to. And there are lots of things that have changed over the years.
Yeah.
Rules and regulations that we as human beings have to follow into different religions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that there are God-made rules and there are man-made rules.
Mm. Mm.
And they're not always the same.
Yeah. Even in the same religion.
Exactly.
I grew up mainly non-denominational Christian, and I still refer to myself as like I call him Yeshua, but I follow him, and I try to keep a lot of the I guess the religious churchanese kind of language out of it. And I'm seeing the more and more I go down that path, I'm starting to like see a lot of the inconsistencies within just Christianity in general. Mainly because I'm starting to see that we're dividing each other. We're being divided within just the local churches. Like people decide to leave their own local church to start their own church. That's how denominations were built. They were built because they disagreed with the Catholic Church, and then they decided to make their own denomination, and then they disagree with each other, and then they made their own denomination, and we have like over, I don't know, like 30,000 different denominations globally, and it just, that doesn't seem like we're loving each other. We're disagreeing each other and fighting with each other because we disagree over the most ridiculous arguments, like how should we baptize babies, and like a lot of things I don't think God cares about. So it's always, I always get reassured when I hear people with their experiences like yours, and many other NDE experiencers. It seems like they see the big picture, and they come back and they're like, "Wake up, guys! You guys are making this way too complicated."
You're so right, because that's one of the things that when God he infused me with this divine wisdom. It was like being hooked up to a giant IV bottle of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept walking around going, "Oh my God, you are so cool." And I said, "You're so awesome." I said, "And you're so simple." And I said, "We human beings make everything so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And God, you are not complicated. And this is just so cool. And if I can figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
anybody can figure it out." I am totally blonde, and I'm totally, if things go over my head, and it's just like, even in my experience, if things were just going right over my head, and I'm like, oh.
Strike, and kind of walk me through the next steps of what you saw, and just kind of, let's travel back in that time, and um, let me know how that whole experience went.
Okay, I was sitting on my back steps behind my house, and there was like a little roof that went over the steps. So I'm sitting on the back steps, and it starts to rain. And around, I don't know what storms are like where you are, but we're here in West Virginia. It'll thunder in the distance. And then all of a sudden, it'll like thunder and lightning in one spot, and then it'll come and thunder and lightning in another spot. But what I heard was thunder in the distance, and then I heard a loud crack, and a lightning bolt hit my right arm. I was talking on a cordless phone to my friend that I told you about, and the next thing I remember, I felt this burning, searing, agonizing pain go through my body. And it actually left char marks on the concrete steps where I was sitting. And then it traveled underneath me, and there is a transformer in front of our house, and it blew the transformer. So I'm feeling this agonizing burning just in my arm and in my chest. And the next thing I know, I'm peeling, my spirit is just peeling right up out of my body. My body's just crumpled on the ground next to the stairs. I could see my body, but I wasn't concerned about it. And I started walking up the stairs, and I went into my house. And when I looked around my house, everything had a burnt gold look to it. And so I'm walking into my house, and I look at the curtains on the window above the sink, which was my first view, and they were not my curtains. And I was, confused about that. I thought, that's weird. And then I went into the dining room, and I noticed that nothing in the dining room was my stuff. It was somebody else's from another, like the 20s or 30s. It was not my stuff. It was my house, but nothing in the house was mine. So I went into the living room, and I hear this old-time radio show playing. It sounded like something you would hear in the Waltons or something. So I'm confused by this. I didn't have a radio. It wasn't my radio. And I was confused because that this was my house, but nothing in it was mine. And that lasted only a couple of minutes. And I've had people ask me, do you think that the lightning sent you back in time to that time period? Well, that house had been there during that time period. The house was built in 1912. And I don't know. I just know that I was in another realm or in another time period. It felt like I was a ghost for a minute or two. And I was afraid. And when I started to really panic about it, that's when that huge loving presence appeared. It was a formless presence. It was so huge. And I instantly knew that that presence was God, but there was no form to this presence. And it just filled me with love and peace and compassion. I could feel his compassion. And I call him a he because that's how he appeared to me, was a he. But I could feel that it's like being wrapped up in a blanket. I felt protected and safe, and I didn't feel any more pain. I wasn't afraid anymore. It was just huge love. And we started moving laterally. And we left the house and we went through these beautiful pink and gold clouds. And I'd never seen anything so magnificent. They were so beautiful. And we were moving very quickly. We didn't move up. We didn't move down. We went sideways. And we got to the end of these beautiful clouds. And it was like he had his arm around my waist and he was holding me. And he was the one that was doing the moving and I was moving with him. That's what it felt like. And we got to the end of the clouds and there was this magnificent garden. It was so beautiful. It was like a spring day. The air was so sweet and so crisp. It was like I could see things floating in the air, It was like not here when you see pollen and irritants floating in the air. It wasn't like that. It was like, I don't know.
Did it feel like you had a body at all?
Oh yes, I had a body.
Okay.
Because what was interesting is that we got to the garden and I'm looking around and I'm hearing the birds. I'm hearing music. I'm hearing people. I actually could feel the grass on my bare feet. But I didn't know I was dead. So I didn't know at that time. It was like I'm floating along like a feather on the breath of God, and so I'm just going along with it, and I'm in so awe of the beauty, the colors. The flowers were so rich and vibrant. Reds were redder, pinks were pinker, yellows were more yellow, and everything glowed. It had this glowing from the inside out, And I saw a sphere in the sky, but it reminded me of like when you see the moon in the daytime.
Yeah.
So the light was not coming from the sun. The light, what I understood was the light was coming from the heart of God, the creator of everything that I was seeing. And that's where the light was coming from. But it looked like the most beautiful spring day. And two men came out of the garden and approached me. And they were wearing a white, ivory linen clothing, like an open shirt and like lounge pants, and they were barefoot. And they had blonde curly hair and it had this color running through it. So they were my two brothers who had died when I was a baby.
Wow.
And they came and they greeted me, and it was like, oh my God, we had this most wonderful family reunion. It was so magnificent.
Wow.
It was Michael and Stephen, and they greeted me, and we, the hugs, the kisses. I kept telling them, oh my God, you look just like Dad when Dad was a little, when he was younger. And, when they smiled, just a perfect image of my dad.
Wow.
Only with longer hair. And I kept telling him, Dad would be so proud of you if he could see you now. Oh my gosh. But they were about the age of 25, late 20s, early 30s.
I find that very like interesting because like in many accounts that I've viewed over like 200 different accounts, and a lot of people say that they see if they see their loved ones or just people in general, they tend to be around that 25 to 30-year old self. Like that
Yes.
seems to be like the common age that I'm kind of hearing about. So that's interesting.
At the time, they would have actually been in their 40s
Right.
when I had this experience, and
Mm-hmm.
that they were not.
They were not.
They were younger, and I saw a whole bunch of other people too.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew them, and they knew me, but I didn't know where I knew them from.
It was like a knowing. It was like you
Oh
just.
yeah, they were from all different time periods, and they
Mm.
were wearing clothing from different time periods. And I don't know if that was for my benefit or if it was because that's what they felt comfortable in or what. But
Mm.
my brothers were actually the ones that had to tell me that I died. And I thought, okay, if I'm dead, I can do this. This is not bad. This is beautiful. I can do this. But so we walked further into the garden, and it there was a fieldstone wall that looked like an old castle wall. It was crumbling, and it had beautiful pink roses growing up and over it.
Mm.
And I saw that, and I thought, oh, how beautiful. And there was a stream, and it sparkled like diamonds. I mean, I don't know, many people call it many different things, but it was just like a beautiful, it water was trickling over the rocks, and the sun, or what, the light of God was making the sparkle. And I heard music, and the music was what I call big music. It was, you know, lots of instruments, bells and drums and violins and cellos and flutes and whatever. I mean, just huge orchestra music, many pieces put together. And what I realized is that the flowers have a vibration, the trees have a vibration, the leaves have a different vibration, the grass, the water, the rocks,
Mm.
everything has a vibration. And when you put all those vibrational sounds together, you have this magnificent orchestra, and you can hear singing. Everything was singing praises to God. It didn't matter whether it was a bird or a person or a tree or a flower. It was everything
Mm.
was, it was so magnificent. It, it just literally took my breath away.
Wow.
It was so beautiful. And so when my brother, so I, there was that. And then when my brothers told me that I had died, I looked down the front of me to see if I still had a body, because I felt like I still had a body. I
Mm.
felt like me. So I looked down the front of me, and I can see my hair down the front of me. I can see my clothing. I saw my feet in the grass. I still had a body, and I could feel and interact. I could move that body. I was walking through this forest, through this not forest, but this beautiful garden. There were trees, and just, I mean, um, I saw buildings. I saw this big, huge city, and it was further down
Mm.
from, the. I could draw it. I could actually draw it, but
Wow.
I'm a terrible drawer. So I would put circles. Okay, the trees were here, and over here was the city, and I was standing here, and the wall was here.
Yeah.
But I looked out, and I could see like 360 degrees around. I wasn't needing to turn my head. I could see everything all at once. I saw houses sitting, over to the right of me, up like one was sitting on a bluff, and I could see the ocean waves coming up onto the rocks below the house.
Did it look virtual, or did it look like very real?
It was so
okay.
more real than what you see here.
Mm.
If people can understand that, that place is more real than here. And I saw another house. I mean, they were made of stone. These houses were made of different kinds of stone. I saw one that I wanted. It was sort of looked like it was built out of castle stone. And it had it was a small house, sort of like an English cottage type house with the beautiful windows, and it had this huge rose gardens in the back of it. So I saw these different buildings, and then as I looked out in the distance, I could see the outskirts of what I call the glorious city. And I saw the big golden wall that surrounds the city. So I figured that was the border. You know, you can't, if you're going to, you know, I don't know. For me, that was a border. I couldn't go past that border, or I wouldn't be coming back.
Because they say that it's always like this threshold that they cannot pass, or they cannot return, or they feel drawn to it, but they decide that, hey, I still have something to do back home. I don't want to go past. So did you feel like a draw, or like a knowing that, hey, I cannot go past this threshold, or were you not sure?
I wasn't sure. I was just going, at this point, I had just found out I was dead. I had just met with my brothers, and all these people were starting to come around. Okay. So when I'm noticing all these things all at once, my senses were so heightened. I was so aware of everything. I could feel everything. And one of the things that was so beautiful to me was the coolness and the softness of the grass on my feet. That, and the smell of the air, and how sweet it smelled, like somebody just squirted perfume. You know, the air was so sweet with the flowers.
No pollution.
But no, I didn't see any cars. But I'm getting deep into this because I'm really feeling it.
Yeah.
Reliving it again. But so my brothers were with me, and this presence moves from beside me to behind me, and my two brothers are on either side of me. And then it was time for my life review, and that's when all this whole big group of people from different time periods showed up. And I knew them, but I honestly don't know where I knew them from. And I was looking at the gowns, and I was looking at the you know, the men's clothes, and you know, and that's how I knew they were from different time periods. And they were just loving me. You know, there was no sense of, you're fat, you're ugly, your makeup isn't right, your hair's messed up, blah blah blah. It was none of that stuff that I had to live with all my life. And then there was a screen that came down, and I was like watching an old-fashioned movie on an old-fashioned movie reel, and that was my life review. And I could see it would move really fast, really really fast, and I just watched it, and I was like, okay, so that was over quick, and my life must be very boring because I didn't, you know, if it's just over. And I said that to my brothers, and I said, what am I missing? Because I'm missing something. And they just smiled at me, and I thought, oh, really? You're not going to tell me? But then I realized there was no judgment. There was just love. It was all it is. I watched it. I didn't judge myself for whatever I was looking at, you know. So it was over. It was done. And we were moving to the next step of this journey. And I learned that God is not, he is not that mean old guy sitting up in the corner of the sky with a black book marking check marks for everything we say and do that's wrong.
He's not Zeus throwing down lightning bolts. Yeah.
He's not that, you know, person that is just created us just so he could throw us in fire and burn us up and kill us, and
Oh,
that
say
kind of
that
thing.
again, please.
He is not that person. It's not. He didn't create us to destroy us. That's not what he. That's not. So as I went further into it, I was looking at the buildings, and I could see a place where babies and children go. I saw them at various ages and stages of life, and apparently they grow up, not only physically, but spiritually, until they get to a certain age, 25, 30, whatever. And then it becomes all about spiritual growth.
Even with how you're describing it, it's like we've been taught to believe that heaven is this far removed reality that won't have any earth-like resemblance. Like, God created the earth, so why wouldn't heaven have a resemblance of what he created?
Right.
So
well, see, that's exactly what I was saying. It's like he can make. He's not. He has no limits. He
right.
can do anything he wants, and heaven is a very busy place. We don't sit on clouds playing silver harps and eating
Right.
bonbons for eternity. That's not.
That sounds boring.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, but I found it to be very busy. People were doing things. People had jobs. They were mentoring and spiritual support. They were, I saw people helping, playing with the children. I saw people helping those that had just newly died, in the spiritual hospital. I saw people, doing picnics and, gathering, and, people were busy.
What was your concept of time there? Like, did they give you a time limit of how long you were unconscious?
Probably only minutes.
Probably minutes, okay. But it felt longer than that.
Oh my gosh. I felt like I had been in heaven for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Wow.
There was so much going on. I was seeing so much and experiencing so much. And there was no time. I mean, we here on earth are the only ones who measure time by minutes and hours and seconds and whatever. But there was absolutely no time there. And I felt like I was there for weeks.
Wow.
And it was so glorious. It was absolutely glorious. So
wow.
as I'm seeing all these buildings and all this beauty, and I see the big city, and in the middle of the city is a huge building that has a golden dome. And I don't know what that building is, but I know it's important, but I don't know what it was. But I saw that. Then there was a grove of trees over to the right of me from where I was standing. And at this point, my brothers were with me, and they were kind of showing me around. And I don't know what the grove of trees was, but Jesus walked out from underneath the grove of trees, and he starts to walk over towards me. I was just like, wow. It was so beautiful that when he walked over to me, my brothers disappeared, and I don't know where they went. And I sat down on the log, and there was a man sitting on the other end of the log, and Jesus walks away. And I start talking to this man that's sitting on the log, and I knew that man was God, and he looked totally different than Jesus looked. And what I try to tell people is Jesus did for me what Jesus always does. He leads you to God. He leads you to, people want to say the Father, because Jesus called God the Father. So he did for me what he always does, and he took me and led me to God, which is what he does. So when people want to say that it's not biblically correct or it's not this or that, well, it kind of is, you know. But So I'm sitting on the log and I'm talking to this man, and he's got a stick and he's kind of doodling in the dirt, and he's just very casually sitting there on this log. So I'm sitting there and we're talking, and he says, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I'm like, "What?" What? And I didn't know what that meant. And he said, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I still didn't, no parents, no children, no husband, no friends, nobody, just me and you. And I didn't know how to answer that question. So he says, "Come with me." So we get up and we start walking through the wooded glen and get further into the woods, and there's a clearing. And he just kind of waves his hand like this, and he opens up the sky. And I could see the vastness of the universe. I
Wow.
could see the planets and the sparkling stars. Then we went back and we sat on the log, and he asked me the question again. And I still wasn't sure how to answer it. I mean, he showed me what it meant, but it was like blew my mind. I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to respond to it. So I started thinking about my family and my children, and I said, "God, you made my children. You are in my children. So when I see my children, I see you." He said, "Yes, that's right." Then I started thinking about my parents, and I said, "You are in my parents. You made them. You are in them. So when I see them, I see you." And he said, "Yes, that's right." And so we kept going on about this. I said this about my husband at the time. And I said, "God, there are people in this world who are cruel. They have hurt me. They have hurt others. But you made them. You're in them. So when I see them, I see you." And he said, "Yes, that's right." What he was trying to get to me to understand was that he is in everything that he creates, and that everything he creates has a purpose. And he was trying to get he said to me, "You are not all those things that people tell you are. You are what I tell you are. I made you. I'm in you. You are not what the world wants you to think you are. I love you. I made you for a reason. You have a purpose." It was those kinds of things that he was telling me. It was not, and he brought me to him to tell me that, because I was believing what the world was saying. And after all of that, we got done talking, and it was just amazing conversation. There were these two angels that took me to this very calm lake. It was like when I looked into the water, it was like looking through glass. And I could see future world events. I saw things that are happening right now, but I saw them happening back in 2005. So I'm looking in the water, looking down into the water, and I can see the earth below, and I can see all of these different things, all of these scenarios playing out. And they are actually happening now and have been happening over the course of time. And the angels were I I was like, "What is the purpose of showing me this? This is horrible. This is just I don't what am I supposed to do with this?"
Right.
And they were like, "But these things do not have to happen. They will happen if mankind doesn't change their ways. But if you change, these events do not have to happen, because the future is not cast in stone. We have the power to change these things." And these things that I saw were horrific. And it was all what we talked about earlier about division, and people are put in classifications. We're not, and what we are is we're one human family.
Yeah.
One family. There isn't well, you're this color, so you're that family, and you're that color, and you believe that, so you're over there, and you're white, and you're trash, so you're over there. It's not like that.
Mm.
You know, it wasn't like that in heaven. There was no division.
Mm.
There was no separation. One of the big things that I took back from my experience was that, and God got in my face with this one, and He said, "It no matter how tiny you might be in the vastness of everything I have created, you are so intricately important to all of what I created.
Mm.
And if you weren't there, then my creation changes."
Wow. Wow.
And then He said to me, it was kind of like an infused type thing. We're looking at each other, and it's sort of an infused type thing, but it's like He was telling me that I think about you 24/7, every single moment of every single day. I think about you. I think about the person on the other side of the world. I think about the person next to you. I think about, every single one of us. It's about when He was asking, what would you do if it was just me and you? It really is just me and you. And it's just you and Him. And it's just your neighbor and Him. And it's about the relationship that we have with Him. But He says, I love you enough to think about you every single second of every single day, every single second. And if I stopped thinking about you for even one instant, you would just poof as if you never were.
Wow.
And that's how much He loves each and every single one of us. It's 7 point whatever billion people on this planet. He loves each one of us that much. And what it means is God is not contained in anything. He's too big to be contained in the world. He's too big to be contained in the universes or the multi-universes or the multi-heavens. He is beyond all of this. He's not contained in His creation. And there is nowhere that we can go. The nowhere part is there is nowhere we can go to hide from God.
Mm.
God is already there. He's already seen it all. He's heard it all. He knows. He's been there, done that. We can't hide under a rock.
Yeah.
We can't go anywhere where He is not already there, because He's in everything He created. So it was huge. I mean, these concepts for me at the time, I was like, oh, it blew my mind. It was like I wasn't the kind of person to think about stuff like that.
Right. Right.
And so it was huge. But then after the angel showed me what they did, I came back to my body, and I'm laying there on the ground, and I'm just burned, and just and I did go to the hospital, and I had medical records to prove. And people have asked me to show them my records, and I say, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting my medical records on YouTube or Facebook or whatever.
People can believe you or not believe you. The point is, what is she saying, and are you living that message, or are you not? They didn't.
Right.
People didn't understand half the things Yeshua was talking about, because they were so caught up in like the story, or the like, where is your kingdom, or can I sit on your right hand? And they didn't realize what they had in front of them, and they were so pressed about trying to be literal about everything and missing the key point of love. And
exactly.
That's the essential factor I'm seeing with every near-death experiencer. They come back and they have this new revelation of what love is, and it's not about this tribalistic approach to having community with people that you just agree with. It's deeper than that. It's like this divine connection where you understand that you can see God in everybody.
Right. You can't, take the thing out of your eye. I tend to be very childlike. I'm the kind of person that takes my shoes off and likes to dance on the flowers. pick up feathers and heart-shaped petals and rocks and that kind of. I'm just in love with the beauty of God that I see in everything, and it's not, and I don't, you know, I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. But I'm back here again and still on a journey.